First, I'd like to introduce myself, Steve Lynott. I got involved with the Kerry Dark Sky International Reserve about 3 or 4 years ago. Many people will know that Julie Ormond and a team of people did a huge amount of work to get the accreditation for the International Dark Sky Reserve. And I never speak without acknowledging that huge amount of work. My job this evening is very simple. I'm introducing the Dark Sky Reserve and John Flannery. John first has been a great help to the Dark Sky Reserve in terms of his support, and John's knowledge of astronomy and of astronomy in Ireland, of astronomy around the world, is quite extraordinary. And what I've asked him to do is focus on helping people understand a little of what's in the sky each month for the next 3 or 4 months, 5 months, I think, so that in these times with COVID, where we can't actually organize dark sky events because socially distancing at night is a challenge. We hope that people can use this information and other information that we link and hopefully help people with to become their own dark sky guides. So I'll hand over to John. One of the things that we're hoping to do is, if anybody has any questions or needs any information, both the live project and myself are available. And John will also provide information, any references he makes to websites or whatever, we will have access to that on email. So anybody who's got any questions, queries, whatever, that we don't address today, we'll certainly address by email or other means at a later time. John, will you take over and start off by apologizing because your first photograph is the sky of Dublin. You're muted there, John, I think.
Yeah, thanks very much, Steve, and thank you, Orla and Lucy, as well, for the opportunity to talk tonight about what's on view in the sky during the month of June. As Steve said, yes, I have to apologize for my first photograph being a view from Dublin, because that's where I actually live. Though I'm from just outside Neenah originally, on a place called Drumineer on Lough Derg on the River Shannon. So going from a city of 1.4 million people to a small village of over 100 people is, yeah, you get some pretty dark skies there. But this was the view last Wednesday of, people may have read about the supermoon or heard about the supermoon on social media, and we were blessed with clear skies. And I'd like to thank that jogger in the foreground for standing still for just a few moments to be part of the photograph. All the other images I took, they're actually blurred as he was running by. But it was really a remarkable moonrise, and we'll have another supermoon later in June. The full moon on the 24th of June will be another opportunity to see quite a spectacular moonrise from wherever you are. The supermoon it's a term that's kind of crept in over the last few years. It was actually an astrologer that coined the term to begin with, and the term is used for a full moon that's within 90% of its maximum possible distance from the Earth. The full moon's orbit, or the moon's orbit about the Earth, isn't perfectly circular. It's slightly an ellipse, and on occasions the moon can be more distant or closer than the average lunar distance. And a supermoon, you may sometimes see that it's 14% bigger than a normal full moon, Unfortunately, that's not true. It's only about 7%
You
bigger.
fucking.
It's 14% bigger than the most distant full moon in the year. But the main thing when you go out at night is often to try and orientate yourself with the sky, because when you look up at the sky, it might seem a bit bewildering at first, especially from a dark sky location like the Kerry Dark Sky Reserve. And it's there that some constellations that we're familiar with can actually act as signposts to help you get orientated. This is a diagram just showing the western sky on the 15th of June when the moon is in the constellation of Leo. But above Leo, you'll see the familiar pattern of the plough. And the plough is a good jumping off point to find other stars in the sky. For example, following the two rightmost stars in the bowl shape of the plough, drawing a line straight up about 5 times the distance between those two stars, you come to Polaris, the North Star. And all the stars appear to pivot about that point during the course of the night. And that's because it's the Earth itself rotating. Standing on the Earth as we are, we appear to be standing still, but a real sense of the motion of the rotation of the Earth is to actually see the constellation shift position over a period of a few hours when you're outside. And using the handle of the plough, you can find a bright orange star called Arcturus. A good mnemonic is arc to Arcturus. If you follow the curve of the handle down, you come to that star. And then you can continue that curve onwards and you come to a star a little bit dimmer, but still quite prominent, a star called Spica. Again, another mnemonic is arc to Arcturus and skip to Spica. The Arcturus is an interesting star in that it is about 37 light years from Earth, but it's a star of what we call the galactic halo, where it's orbiting perpendicularly to the general flow of traffic around the center of our galaxy. Our sun and all the other stars we see in the sky are generally confined to the disk of the Milky Way, but Arcturus is diving down perpendicularly through the disk, and we see it bright because it's close at the moment. But in time, it will recede from Earth, and in about 500,000 years' time, a blink of an eye in terms of the cosmos, it will have disappeared from view, and we probably will never encounter it again. But it's also interesting in that there's a story that it was used to turn on the lights in the Chicago World Fair back in the 1930s, because it was thought to be 40 light years away at the time, and the star was, or 40 years prior to that, was the first Chicago World Fair. So they got the idea of focusing the light of Arcturus onto the photoelectric cell, which turned on the illuminations to open the World Fair. So it's a star with a lot of very interesting history behind it. So not all stars you see in the sky are anonymous. They have character, they have a story behind them. Not just the constellations have stories, but individual stars have too, and they're worth exploring. If you look at the plough close up, and again focus on the handle, but this time the middle star on the handle of the plough, you'll notice, and you may have noticed it before, there seems to be a fainter star accompanying the middle star on the handle. And that's a genuine double star where two stars are orbiting a common center of gravity. You can see it with the unaided eye. Binoculars will certainly reveal it, but it was originally back in kind of like a millennium ago. Some cultures considered it a test of eyesight if you wanted a position of being an archer in their army, believe it or not. So if you could see those two stars distinct from each other, it suggested you had keen eyesight and you got the job of an archer in the army. But certainly it's a very intriguing pair of stars to observe. And in fact, astronomers now know it to be a multiple system of 5 stars all orbiting a common center of gravity in a complex dance. So the familiar plough has a few secrets, and that's just one of them. But the secret of getting started in astronomy is to like start off quite slowly. Like, don't get too daunted about what you see in the sky. There's plenty of guides out there nowadays to guide you through how to find your way around the sky. And this photograph just highlights some of the ones I always recommend to people to use. In fact, I have them here just beside me, and those two guides, they come out around early to mid-September every year for the following year. So the 2022 guides should appear around September this year. They both have like a lot of information about what's happening every month in the sky, and they also have excellent star charts accompanying them. That's an example of the Phillips charts there, and the Collins charts are split over 2 pages, one for showing the southern sky aspect and one for showing the northern sky aspect. And they really are an excellent purchase every year. Both cost about €10, but you can often find them cheaper. Some bookshops actually discount them quite heavily, and they really are well worth picking up. And in the last 2 years, this book by Tom Kerrs, who was with Greenwich Observatory, appeared. And Moon Gazing, the core of the book is a terrific double-page spread of moon maps that pick out and name the major features on the moon's surface that you can see in binoculars. Again, it's about 10 or 11 euro to purchase, but it really is a book that will last you for years and years because of the moon atlas that is in it. And binoculars are really the way to go when you start off as an amateur astronomer, because they will allow you to just grab them and get out there and get set up scanning the skies, and they can reveal quite a lot. Like some of the binoculars I've picked up in recent years have been on sale in Lidl, for example, for only €20, and they really are excellent quality. And I know Steve remarked to me the other night that it's almost impossible nowadays to buy a bad pair of binoculars because they really are made to excellent standards. And in fact, binoculars, even a pair of binoculars, will be better than most of the telescopes that Galileo used. And Galileo made discoveries that shook astronomy right to its foundations and set us on a journey of real discovery of our place in the universe. Binoculars would show you lots of craters and markings on the moons of Jupiter, star fields in the Milky Way, bright comets. Like the list is endless, and just with those items there, you could spend many, many months exploring the sky, and then eventually maybe take a further step and dive in deep and buy a telescope, and then you're really hooked. But looking ahead to June, what do we have in the month ahead? Well, although it doesn't get dark until very late at this time of year, the sky is still quite busy, because as the moon goes around the sky over the course of a month, it has an encounter with a number of planets. And also it has an encounter with our parent star, the sun, on June 10th, when we see a partial solar eclipse. It's also a time of year, because of the lingering twilight, you can see lots of satellites passing overhead. And it's also a month when astronomers actually look forward to clouds. I'll say a little bit more about that later on. But these are very special type of clouds. The solar eclipse happening next Thursday, June 10th, it's the first partial solar eclipse from Ireland since August 2017. The eclipse is what's called an annular eclipse. An annular eclipse occurs when it's new moon and the moon is at its most distant point from Earth in its orbit. It means the disk of the moon is too small to fully cover the sun during mid-eclipse, and you get a ring of light left around the sun, rather like that photograph there, which we got from Darness in northern Scotland. It was just before annular, or the sun was fully eclipsed, and you can begin to see the annulus, or ring of light, starting to form around the silhouette of the moon. The annular event is only visible from Arctic regions, from northeastern Canada across the North Pole and then into northern Siberia. Regions outside that experience a partial eclipse. And the table there gives the details. It's happening on Thursday morning. The eclipse begins roughly around 10 a.m., mid-eclipse roughly around 11 a.m., and then the eclipse is played out in reverse. The moon moves off the sun's disk and takes about an hour to do so. And depending on where you are in Ireland, the more northwest you are, the deeper the eclipse, up to 33% eclipsed, whereas for me in Dublin, about 28.5% eclipsed. And now the big thing about an eclipse is, a partial eclipse, is how to view it safely. And that is absolutely critical, because looking directly at the sun through any sort of optical equipment without it being suitably filtered runs a risk of instant blindness. And even using material, I've heard of people using things like crisp packets or aluminium foil from the kitchen to look directly at the sun. An absolute no-no, because that material is not of a suitable standard to filter out the invisible radiation from the sun, the infrared wavelengths, which can cause burning in your retina without even realizing it. And people have their eyes permanently scarred for life because of that. The only really safe way is to project the image, say using using a pair of binoculars, for example. You can project the image by uncapping, leave the cap on one side, because and then uncap the other, uncap the objective, and then kind of point it in the general direction of the sun. Don't look through the binoculars. Kind of move it around until you see a a circular oval of light falling on a piece of white card behind, and then you can actually see the silhouette of the moon moving across the sun. But the other way is to get a kitchen sieve, or a strainer, a kitchen strainer, or even one of those drain covers, or even to use a hole punch and punch holes in a piece of card yourself. And like in this example here, at another eclipse, I projected used the holes, acted like pinhole cameras, and you could see the multiple images of the solar crescent projected onto a piece of white card. You can pick up eclipse viewers which have safe material, are made of very safe material, and a couple of suppliers online have them, but when I checked, their delivery date was after the solar eclipse. So, but there may be local suppliers in Ireland, like Stephen Kershaw, for example. He has a telescope company called K-Tech, K-T-E-C, K-Tech Telescope. And if you check Stephen's website or give him a call, you may be in luck in terms of getting some of that solar filter material. But the kitchen strainer is a novel way of doing it, and it really will work. But there's a couple of websites streaming the eclipse. The Dublin Institute for Advanced Studies, in conjunction with their radio telescope facility at Bord Castle, they're planning to live stream the eclipse at that address there. Moving back to the evening sky, the planets currently on view in the evening sky are Venus and Mars. Venus is quite dazzling, but it's still quite low at the moment. Mars a bit dimmer, well, a good bit dimmer than Venus, but still in the evening twilight, you should be able to pick it out. It doesn't really show that distinctive red color when it does at its normal or at its maximum brightness, but a way of spotting it in the end of next week is when on the 13th, the moon is quite close to Mars. But the day after the solar eclipse on June 11th, the very thin crescent moon will be near Venus. And then the following night on the 12th, Venus will be to the lower right of the slightly thicker crescent. So the moon has an encounter on 3 nights in a row with 2 planets at the end of next week, which would be quite dramatic. Venus and Mars then get quite close to each other in early July, but at the end of June, they're still a little bit away from each other, but they'll still be quite noticeable in the evening sky. For the other planets, Mercury is not visible this month, but Saturn and Jupiter appear around midnight towards the end of June. They'll come up a little after midnight at the moment, but on the just after midnight on the morning of June 28th, you'll see the moon between Saturn and Jupiter. And both planets are, although they require staying up till a late hour at the moment, as we get deeper into the summer, they'll appear earlier and earlier, so that by August they're up maybe around 9 in the evening time and well placed for viewing. Of course, the Milky Way is quite prominent at this time of year. Although we have to wait till August till it's nicely visible in the reasonably early evening sky, it's still quite dramatic when you go out to see it. And as I mentioned, even with binoculars, you get some extraordinary views as you sweep along its length. Those kind of dark areas are cold gas clouds that will eventually collapse to form new stars. The bright regions are stars that appear packed on top of each other, although they're still quite far away from individually far from each other. They appear huddled together because we're looking along, like we're looking along many thousands of light years across the distance of the Milky Way. So it appears quite extraordinarily rich in star regions. Some areas much brighter than others because of other areas being obscured by dark dust clouds. Those streaks you see there are not shooting stars, they're actually satellites. This time of year, because the sun isn't far below the horizon all night long, there's almost a perpetual twilight. It never gets truly dark. And satellites, because they orbit so high overhead, they catch the sunlight, even though the world below is somewhat in darkness. And the summer months are the best time to see satellites. The heavensabove.com website is probably the best website to get satellite predictions for your location. The International Space Station isn't visible, unfortunately, this month until towards the end of June, and then only in the morning sky around 4 a.m. But what will be visible again in the morning sky towards the end of the month is the new Chinese space station, Tianhe, or Heavenly Palace. And that was launched just a couple of months ago. Resupply mission is due to reach it at some point this month and dock with it and transfer fuel and air and other supplies for an upcoming crewed mission, which is probably due for launch some stage in July. But the Tianhe space station doesn't orbit as, or isn't seen as high up in the sky as the International Space Station is. It's because its orbit is at a slightly shallower inclination than the International Station. So Tianhe appears low in the sky and fainter than the ISS, but no one has seen it from Ireland yet. Could you be the first? And then I mentioned clouds. The clouds that astronomers look forward to at this time of year are called Noctilucent clouds or night shining clouds. They're the highest types of cloud that can occur. They occur about 80 kilometers up, 83 to be exact. And they are basically caused by ice crystals forming around meteorite dust. This dust is a constant gentle drizzle coming into Earth's atmosphere. And these clouds can be seen in the summer months along the northern horizon about 90 minutes after sunset or 90 minutes before sunrise. And some displays have already been seen from Ireland. There was a couple of weak displays towards the end of May that some observers managed to catch. But as we get further into the summer, we should see an increased frequency. And these clouds do seem to get better as the months go by. We can generally see them up to about mid-July. And the best displays I've seen the last few years have been the first week or so of July. And this particular one on the night of the 10th, 11th of July last year was very, very dramatic. It was the brightest I'd ever seen and was truly an extensive display that spanned from the north, well, almost the eastern horizon to the northwestern point on the horizon. And an added bonus was Comet Neowise, which appeared above it at the time. So just to wrap up, there are some of the websites, just a couple of the websites that would keep you up to date about what's happening in the sky over the next month. We covered July's notes in next month, but for the moment, like a site like skymaps.com allows you to download PDF each month of the sky, the evening sky. Spaceweather.com would give you details of displays of the northern lights or Noctilucent clouds. Heavens Above is for the space station and other satellites like the ubiquitous Starlinks. And then just to keep up to date with general news, universetoday.com. So thanks everyone for listening there.
Thank you, John.
Thanks.
The photograph that John has just put up here was actually taken, it appeared in the Irish Times the other day. John was part of the team who evaluated photographs. And incredible as this one is, what you're actually seeing is the Milky Way photograph from Valentia Island, and the bright star to the left of the Milky Way is actually the planet Jupiter. A magnificent photograph and representative of what we can actually see here in the dark sky. Just in terms of very quickly to just address a few kind of quick hints. The first thing is the Kerry Dark Sky Reserve is one of the few places in the world where red light district is actually welcomed. We encourage people to get something like a torch, standard torch, put a cover on it, nail varnish if your wife doesn't mind, or a bit of plastic. We'll turn a standard torch into a red torch. A red torch doesn't damage your night vision, which means that you can actually see the stars much easier. And if you use a white torch, it takes about 20 minutes once you turn it off for the stars to appear. Use a red torch. You can look at your reference maps or whatever that John has already referenced. A few other practical things. Midges are a factor, so midgie cream or midgie spray is definitely something to consider before you go out. Layers, because no matter how warm a day it is, if the sky is clear, it's going to get cold. And if you're really fascinated, you're going to stay out there longer. So you're much better having layers, woolly hat or whatever. John also mentioned binoculars. I always say, and John referenced it earlier, don't buy expensive binoculars. You are definitely going to drop them. No question. In the dark, you're going to slip and you're going to drop a pair of binoculars. We lose about 5 pairs on average a year to fall damage. So wait until you're seriously committed before you blow money on a really expensive pair, and then the budget can be fairly limitless. I think we've set up a mechanism to get some questions. So if there is anybody with questions, I'll ask Lucy to handle that.
Thanks, both of you. I was away there in a reverie of thinking about the sky and enjoying that gorgeous photograph as well. There are no questions that I can see in the chat. The problem with that is sometimes people put them individually to speakers. So if you do want to type a question, please make sure that you're typing to everyone. If anyone would like to just ask a question, please do raise a hand by using the little reactions bar down at the bottom, or you're free to unmute yourselves and just speak as well, as long as you're not speaking over lots of other people. Just while you're thinking also, I think it's been noted already that we're hoping to run these events every month. so that people can get a little guide of what to look out for in that coming month. As well as looking at the stars and the moon in the daytime. We would love to cover some other topics related to darkness, and we're hoping to have some speakers to speak about the importance of the darkness and nighttime for some of our animals and for viewing biological occurrences as well. So if you have any general suggestions, or indeed if you'd like to even make a contribution to one of these events, please do also, you can tell us now or get in touch, because there's loads of other aspects of the dark skies that we have here in Kerry that are really interesting for lots of different reasons. And as I still don't see any questions coming in, one thing that I would like to know is, I know where the Dark Sky Reserve is here in Iveragh, but maybe Steve, you could talk about some of the best places to go to see some of the things that we've heard about today. I noted that a lot of things are visible in the north, and for some people, I suppose that might be mountainous, so the things that are low in the skies, or, you know, where are the good places for us to go and look up in the coming weeks? You're on mute, sorry, Steve.
One of the things that I say is safety is obviously critical at night. And having told everybody not to use white torches, I then follow it up with do your stargazing somewhere safe. And what I particularly enjoy myself and recommend to people are car parks, beach car parks. They're not lit at night. They're flat. You can drive to the location easily enough, turn your lights off, and a few minutes later you're there watching. In terms of the actual visibility, one of the things that is important to understand is that relative to many places in the world, anywhere in the Dark Sky Reserve is magnificent compared to any city location. So safety, car park, beachside, there's something particularly magical to me about stargazing with the tide noise in the background. And one other thing that never occurred to me until we had some American tourists, and a cat went by while we were looking in a telescope, and they all jumped back because things that move in the night in other countries tend to kill you. And we're very lucky in that we, other than midges, have not been attacked at night by any other beastie. Does that answer the question?
Yeah, I guess it does. I can think of lots of nice beaches to go and look at stars from, for sure. Yeah.
And certainly, sorry, Lucy, certainly what you said, Steve, about the flat ground and the level spaces, it's ideal for photography as well, because like even with a standard camera, like even a point and shoot camera has the ability nowadays to do a short time exposure and zoom in on celestial objects, and you can easily get photos of many of these phenomena, especially say with the solar eclipse. Now, don't point your camera directly at the sun because you could damage the sensor in the camera, but certainly by using the old sieve or the strainer and just getting a photo of the crescents projected onto a piece of white card is quite a dramatic and nice record of what you actually see. And as far as I know, the forecast is good for next Thursday.
So you had a lovely picture there of an eclipse, a solar eclipse, and then went on to tell us never ever to look at the sun even through a camera because we'll instantly go blind, or
Yes.
sounded very dooming. So how did you take that photograph?
Well, back then that was film camera, so So rather than a digital camera, so I was able to get away with it, but the risk with a digital camera is of damaging the sensor, and also it will focus on the brightest object it sees, so it will overexpose the sun, and you won't so much that you won't actually see the silhouette of the moon at all. It's rather like trying to photograph the moon with your phone camera. It'll generally just be a white disk washed out, because a camera is very poor at covering the well, it's very poor compared to the human eye in terms of the ability to compensate for different light levels. So if you try and photograph the moon in a star field, you'll either overexpose the moon to record the stars, or you'll underexpose the moon and no stars will be shown. But the human eye can compensate for that automatically. So
yeah. I'm yet to take a decent photograph of anything in the dark. So yeah, I'll leave it to people who know a lot more than I do.
Oh, no, it is, no, it is trial and error, Lucy, and certainly when you persevere at it, like you'd be surprised.
Yeah. I know we have some very talented photographers of the dark sky around here as well, and I kind of enjoy looking at their photographs. So I suppose sometimes it's you're as well off though, just seeing what other people can do. We do have one more comment here, and then we can possibly finish, and I'll go and have our evening cups of tea. So Linda is saying that it was very interesting, and she loved your talk, and she wants to know, in relation to the moon, what are the easiest features for a beginner to look out for?
Thanks, Linda, for that question and for tuning in tonight. I actually sent Orla and Lucy a set of handouts a short while ago, which they'd be able to share with you. And one of the pages is a basic moon map, and it highlights the main features on the moon. But the main thing when you look at the moon through binoculars, for example, the first thing you notice is it's got the dark markings, which are called seas or mare, because back when they first started looking at the moon through a telescope, they genuinely thought there were bodies of water. Now we know there are outflows of basalt in the moon's early history that have solidified, but those seas, when you're looking on the left-hand side of the moon, in fact, even though they say full moon isn't the best time to look at the moon, full moon is when you can see some craters stand out dramatically because they have systems of rays emanating out from them, and those ray systems are surrounding craters named after Copernicus, Tycho, and Kepler. And basically they resulted from the meteorites or asteroids that created the craters originally excavated more pristine material from under the lunar surface and kind of splattered it around the craters. But the best time to actually look at the moon is when it's not full, because then you can see you can see along the edge of the moon some of the craters in shadow, but certainly like that moon map or Tom Kerr's book Moon Gazing, they will highlight lots of things to actually look for. But certainly with the main thing is like just to identify the major seas and look for those larger craters with the ray systems. They'll be really dramatic. Yeah, I hope that's
Yeah, so we'll definitely send that around to everybody afterwards.
Yeah, thanks,
Know more
Lucy.
about that.
Lucy, I just saw a question there come up on the chat about taking photographs using mobile phones. There's an app called Nightcap, all one word, not a glass of whiskey, but an app, Nightcap. That is, it has various functions. One of the ones that I've used a lot is an ISS function. Basically, you sit it on a stand, wait for the ISS to appear and push the button, and the phone and Nightcap make you look like a genius with the photograph that you produce at the International Space Station. So that's one app I recommend. Another one for general viewing is Stellarium, which is free for Mac and Windows. The app itself costs about $3.99 for a phone, but it's quite brilliant in the sense that you can point your phone at the constellation and you'll get a graphic representation. And then there was a question about Julie Orman's books. Unfortunately, I have not been able to find any copies of her books. Quirks in Carsavine used to hold on to them. So if anybody does know of any location for them and lets me know, we'll certainly provide the information on that. The one thing I can just finish by saying, somebody asked about interesting phenomena that we've seen at night. The first time I was in a dark sky with John was when he was representing Dunsink Observatory. We had a speaker also from Paris Observatory, and we had another speaker from Greenwich Observatory. And
Great, yeah.
I had the pleasure of having these three geniuses with me, and another guy called Barry, who was an expert on the Messier objects. Charles Messier is a famous French astronomer, and literally we were calling out Messier numbers, and this guy was able to find them without reference to charts or anything. And then, like little children, each one of us lined up to look at his telescope, to look at this object. And it was quite phenomenal, his knowledge and his skill in being able to pull these items up. And Greg Smyth-Runsby from Greenwich, who was also a writer for Astronomy Now magazine, said that's Greg's magazine. He said that it was the first time in his life that he had ever seen a voice-activated telescope in operation, because that's exactly the experience. So that was a very special night. Can I just thank John, as ever, for his knowledge and his contribution, and Lucy as well for her hosting of this. And we look forward to next month and the next few months. So yes, thank you from me.
Thank you. Yeah, and definitely to add to that question from Grania, like personally, all the most interesting and incredible phenomena I've seen in the night sky required absolutely no equipment whatsoever. Like fantastic displays of the Northern Lights from Ireland. One back in 1991 where I could see my shadow cast purely by the Northern Lights, meteor showers, lunar eclipses. No, well, solar eclipses, I've had to travel for those to see them, because the next solar eclipse, total solar eclipse from Ireland, is until the year 2090, and the southwest of the country is the only place that gets to see it. If I stay in Dublin, I have to wait till the year 2600 to see its total solar eclipse. So I'll have to move down to Kerry between now and 2090.
Excellent. You're always welcome, John.
Thanks, Steve.
A highly recommended move. Thanks so much for your expertise and for sharing it with us all. And I look forward to hearing what we can look for again in July. And thank you so much to everyone who has attended as well this evening. It's great to have you.
Yeah, thank you, everyone. Thanks.
All right.
And
Good night.
thanks for the questions. Thanks.